I don't just have type 1 diabetes, I've also got OCD. And OCD is a monster, it's a bully.
We need to get to a stage where everyone is looked at as an individual and you look at the all-encompassing package. Because I went to certain appointments where they were just looking at numbers and saying, well done, this is good, but well actually, what about in my mind?
I felt like I had to make a choice of, is my focus going to be on my type 1 diabetes or the chronic kidney disease?
I've just been through a course of CBT for OCD as well. I don't know that it was related to my diabetes, but it's been one of those things that as long as I can remember, I've been living that way within my mind.
But yeah, type 1 diabetes is an invisible condition. But when you go to the doctors, it becomes visible with your bloods and stuff. What doesn't become visible, unless we start talking more, is the mental health side. That always remains invisible.
Before we wrap up the conversation, there's a individual question for each one of us around the table that is conveniently located under these coasters in front of us.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
Want to go first?
do you want to?
Okay.
Oh, actually, Adam's
that you
Adam's
guys,
gone.
No,
Who are we going?
Read them, yeah.
Who's going?
Duke is my name. What's it like living with type 1 and OCD? Interesting. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a heavily stigmatized and misunderstood mental health condition. So basically, when I was about 12 years old, I started to get intrusive thoughts that were linked to my ethics, morals, values, things, and people that I love. And I felt this like hydraulic press of responsibility on my shoulders to prevent each intrusive thought from happening. And there are lots of different subtypes with OCD. So mine's mainly something called pure OCD. So it's mainly in my head, 90% is in my head. But I do physical compulsions as well. For example, running up and down my stairs 50 times before I go to bed because I'm stuck in a compulsion. So yeah, I mean, when I was young, it was really difficult. Basically I didn't want to tell anybody about it because I was afraid of stigma and afraid people would think I was crazy. So the way I like to say it is that my brain told my hand told the pen told the page, and I was able to articulate and figure out what was going on in my head through the power of poetry, rhyme and rhythm, which is why I'm very fortunate enough to do poetry as a full-time job, and I encourage people to always write about how they're feeling. But going through life, hit 23 years old. By then, 21 years old is when I finally got help with OCD. I had cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure response prevention therapy. Then got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and both conditions basically collided because obviously on the barrel of the pen, you've got to load up numbers. So like every number has like an intrusive thought attached to me. So if I inject one number, I'm like, this intrusive thought I don't want to happen. I then feel like I got to do a compulsion. It's very complex, just like type 1 diabetes is. So what happened was I decided either just to completely not take my insulin because it was easier, or I would get to a number and I'd inject too little insulin because I didn't like that other number, or I'd get to a number and inject too much insulin, which is obviously very dangerous, and then run around the house and eat loads of carbs. And then also like repetitive basically I would have this intrusive thought thinking I was injecting the intrusive thought in my body. So then as a compulsion, I would get my pen and stab myself 20 times just in my belly or whatever, just to like, as a release. That was the compulsion. So I guess the reason why I'm sharing this is just to show that people need to be treated as the whole holistically. I don't just have type 1 diabetes, I've also got OCD. And OCD is a monster, it's a bully, it's a parasite. It gets into every cell. I say it drops nuclear bombs on every nucleus, because once you feel like you've got over one intrusive thought, another one pops in. So yeah, it's been very challenging, but I've thankfully over a number of years been able to inject insulin safely and comfortably.
You should be proud of where you've come to. I think you make a really good point about it being looked at together.
Yeah.
Like, that you've got OCD and type 1, and when I had huge issues with my anxiety and mental health, I'd go into diabetic appointments. People would say, your HbA1c is good, or this is your number, they've done your blood test, your liver, kidney, we've checked your retinopathy, that's good. Your feet, check, this is good. What's the average amount you do? Well done. No, hang on, I'm in the worst place I've ever been at. You haven't asked me one question about how I'm doing mentally, because we are looking at it as a piece of paper where you're at with your diabetes management. But it's such a complex condition, as you've alluded to with your OCD. There's people that have had eating disorders as a result of it. You've spoken about not being able to inject. I've spoken about anxiety, mental health, nearly being put on antidepressants. I think we need to get to a stage where everyone is looked at as an individual, and you look at the all-encompassing package. Because I went to certain appointments where they were just looking at numbers and saying, "Well done, this is good," but well, actually, what about in my mind?
Do you know how simple it is to walk into a diabetes? Not us, but a healthcare professional. Somebody sits in front of you. How are you today? Just asking, how are you?
Yeah.
Rather than going straight into the numbers, and that can just break so much down, because then you can talk about how you're feeling in that moment, and then naturally you'll probably mention your diabetes. But if I just say, what your numbers, what are you doing?
Well done. Yeah.
I think there should be psychologists as well, not in the appointment, but a psychologist that understands type 1 diabetes, the burden that it comes with. Yeah. That should be a part of the NHS.
Totally.
In fact, in Wales, I've been fortunate enough to be a part of young people having a psychologist on board, which is now actually implemented in Wales, which is amazing.
Wow,
which is fantastic. So I think that should be for adults as well.
Yeah. I've just been through a course of CBT for OCD as well. I don't know that it was related to my diabetes, but it's been one of those things that, as long as I can remember, I'd been living that way within my mind. But because I never spoke about those things and nobody else does, you don't know that actually thinking you're going to throw yourself in front of a bus is you think that's not normal. But a lot of people have those thoughts, but they don't even give it a second thought, if you see what I mean. I actually had to change how I walked places to avoid those busy roads where there was lorries and things like that, because I know I never wanted to do it, but you think like you might. And goes back to that whole thing of, like you said there, which really resonated. And it's the only reason I'm sort of mentioning this, really, because it's not related to, I don't believe it's related to my diabetes, but it's that thing of OCD attacks the things you care about. So for me, it was all about, I do so much to be relevant, vital, healthy, active, and I have done for a long, long time. And every intrusive thought was telling me, just step out in front of that bus. Just jump out that window, just fall over that, like all these things constantly, because that's the thing that I really care about, which is exactly what you were talking about. So,
thanks for sharing. I appreciate it.
Okay. Mine, Adam, how do you balance being a type 1 diabetic and work in live TV? Yeah, good question. Any aspect of my job that's live, obviously, my biggest fear is having a hypo on air. So I do everything I can to ensure that doesn't happen. So I'll get up earlier than I would usually to check my bloods, might have to eat earlier, I'd eat a low, even if it's an unhealthy, I'm not advocating for unhealthy eating, but I might have sausages and bacon, for instance, because although that's unhealthy, I don't eat it any other point other than a Saturday morning, because that's when I do my live show. But I know that's low in carbs, therefore I need a less amount of insulin before I go on air. So I'll always wake up earlier, I'll check myself regularly. I've got a widget on my watch, which is what I'm checking, and bloods are really high now, actually. So I'll have that on I'll always wear my Apple Watch so that I can glance at it. With one glance, it has my bloods. Wake up early, have a low carb breakfast, check myself regularly, and usually run a tiny bit higher beforehand. So I'd be 10 or 11 going on air, knowing that I'll probably be okay. And what usually happens is the adrenaline has the opposite effect. It actually makes you go a bit higher because of the buzz, the live TV and all that. But I take it very seriously. It's just, I think with all of this, it's a great question, because that could be applied to when you go out for a drink, when you play sport, when you're in intimate moments, when you have anything stressful. Just if ever you're in an environment that is a little bit outside of a normal day, carry more sugar with you, check yourself more regularly, just be a little bit more on it. And that's what I tend to do.
Marcus, hi. How do you exercise the way you do with type 1?
Good question.
It's one of those things that when you do it, you don't go from being like, if you're sedentary or reasonably, not particularly active, you don't just think, well, tomorrow I'm going to go and do this big thing or whatever that might be. So as you train your body to be able to go from, like, even if you're doing couch to 5K, right? You're doing couch to 5K. As you train your body to be able to do that 5K, you're also learning about what your diabetes does in that model. So you learn, you know that you need more, you might need more sugar, you might need to start with a blood sugar of X and all this kind of stuff. And it depends on the time of day. So I always used to try and do most of my long runs first thing. So I'd run them fasted, take gels with me, absolutely fine. As soon as I put insulin into the mix, for example, for me, running at the end of the day is a lot harder than running at the beginning of the day, just for that simple fact there. But you learn that through doing it. And I also learned that, if I'm going out for an hour, I can probably be okay. But if it's going to be more than that, then I need to make sure I've got more provision. Tech is your friend nowadays. If you've got headphones, Apple Watches and all that kind of stuff, my headphones, it's all telling me, your CGM is saying that you're at this level. So you're getting those audible cues that you don't need to be checking it. So I think you learn as you train. You're training your diabetes knowledge as well as you're training your body. And then when it comes to like event day or big day or whatever it is, and I think so I've run a bunch of ultras, I've done a bunch of 50 milers and a couple of like double marathon type things. And it's essentially a rolling buffet where I don't need to worry about insulin because your intensity level is very low. Unless you're winning, nobody's sprinting for that amount of time, right? Or even running hard.
Not even David Goggins, right?
Not even David Goggins, exactly right. You're just cruising at a pace, you're walking a bit, but you're cruising. And so you've got time to eat. You can eat real food, so you don't fill up on sugary gels and all this kind of stuff. So it's just like, it's the closest I've felt to not having diabetes since I've had diabetes is when I'm on a really long run. And that is, I'm not going to lie.
Is that why you do it? Is that a factor of why you do it?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't have said so. I don't think so. Because again, you learn as you go. So it's not like I set that out. That's just a byproduct of having done it, really.
I think that's a good point about this condition. You learn the most through experience. We're all so different. Actually learning the most through learning your body through the apps is a massive thing. And also not beating yourself up when you have a bad day, I think is huge as well. The thing about this condition is psychologically it can really get you. You have a bad day, you think, what have I done wrong? You've got a bit of tech screaming at you when you're high, screaming at when you're low. But to know that actually no one can get it right 24/7. Don't let that beat you up, beat yourself up too much.
I have this thing that diabetes has a way of telling you that you're really bad. Near enough every single day. But it's down to you, as you quite rightly say, how you manage that voice,
isn't it? Not to let it affect you.
100%.
So Dan, so what's on your coaster?
Dan, have you experienced complications living with type 1? So I live with complications of type 1 diabetes. 2013, diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. In 2018, received a kidney transplant. Most likely, the chronic kidney disease was a complication of type 1. And that was really, obviously, a very, very difficult time because it was another diagnosis. I probably wasn't in the best space mentally with my type 1. And then I felt like I had to make a choice of, is my focus going to be on my type 1 diabetes or the chronic kidney disease? And then it was just managing that. And effectively, my kidney function was declining over the years. So then it got to the point where I needed a transplant or dialysis. I was very, very fortunate to have a preemptive transplant. So I've never been on dialysis. And
Who was your donor? Do you mind?
So my donor was my mum.
Yeah.
So
it's often family, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate in that aspect. And also, having a transplant or needing it's not like I'm saying, oh, can you lend me a $5? Like, you're well, you have to have an operation because I'm unwell. And so it was really, but that's what led to my whole advocacy journey. But I think also at that point, it was a culmination of, for many years, as I've shared, like the message was really blunt around complications and almost feeling that I'd failed the test, but actually, and I felt alone in so many points in that journey. And I was like, well, if I feel alone, other people feel alone. So let me just start sharing my journey. And also, I would want us as a community, just as a diabetes community, just change the way that we talk about complications. I'm not advocating go and get them at all.
No.
But what I am saying is that the conversation needs to be different in the sense of if you're diagnosed with a complication, that's another life-changing thing. And instead of having the internalized stigma of, I'm the worst person living with diabetes in the world, it should be, and again, it goes back to how you view a situation, that I've now got this complication, my life will change, but my life still goes on, rather than feeling at that moment your life ends and you start thinking, what if I did this, what if I did that, and what...
Yeah.
You can't change the past, but you can change your future and how you look at it. I also live with retinopathy as well, and so I've had laser treatment on both eyes, and vitrectomy surgery on my right eye. I'm always conscious how I say that because it sounds like another type of surgery. But it's sort of had that.
Gosh.
But again, a lot of it is past management, but also I feel like it's put me in a different space, and I feel like I have more empathy for people living with diabetes because I know, not more than anyone, but I just understand, like, things happen. Also, life goes on. And before I finish, the key thing for me, particularly around the retinopathy, was that all of the conversations felt like they were about, oh, how can we stop you from going blind? How can we stop you from losing? But there was nothing ever about giving me hope or changing that narrative. So I had to do that myself and just say, actually, this treatment here is to help me and to improve my sight. And whether it has or it hasn't, I felt like psychologically that made a big difference for me. So I live with complications, and I feel that it's a conversation that we should be having more within the community.
Are you closer to your mum now as a result?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
What a legend, man.
You must be. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I suppose if you had asked her for a fiver, she knew she wasn't getting that back either, right?
Yeah. But it's made a big difference, and I'm here today, and it's led me to run half marathons, marathons.
Of course.
So again, it goes back to what we were saying about.
Yeah.
I'm now looking after myself much better than I would have been before. So.
Wow.
Man, that's a powerful story, man.
Jeez.
Honestly, that is powerful. And it's amazing how you mentioned, like, the psychologist, you mentioned psychology, I mentioned mental health, wellbeing, got to be more done for the mental side of this condition, man. The stigma and the mental side of this, and people talking, and doctors and psychologists coming together. Because it affects so much more than those numbers of the condition. But I think you're great proof of what you can overcome. And I think what we've all done is, like, we've all managed to achieve something with it, and that's definitely a message I want to get across, that we've all had other issues that have been very challenging, but it doesn't stop you doing anything in this condition. Like, we've got to maintain that positivity, I think, for people.
Well, what you've been through there. I mean, obviously, I didn't know all of that. No. You would not know from looking at you. So that is huge. You are thriving.
I feel like this conversation today has just been amazing. I feel like there's been different parts where we've all had similar experiences.
We've probably all learned something.
And all different experiences as well. And I feel like at the start we wanted to cover a lot of different topics and go to different places. And I feel that we've done that in a way that I would like to think has been warm and welcoming to those watching as well. One last word before we sign off from?
I just wanted to say this has been amazing. Great to meet yourself, Adam, Dan, this class, Marcus. But type 1 diabetes is an invisible condition. But when you go to the doctors, it becomes visible with your bloods and stuff. What doesn't become visible, unless we start talking more, is the mental health side. That always remains invisible. You can't take a blood test of the brain and be like, you are 7.2 today of mental health. For this conversation, about men's mental health, it's so important. We keep the conversation going.
We've actually come back to that point more than almost like the diabetes has been the underlying thing, and everything else has been layered on top of it, hasn't it? Really, I think is the other thing about how to exist in the world and do whatever it is that we do with this underlying thing, this baseline thing. So. I think I take the same thing away from it. And this has felt really good, by the way. I've really enjoyed it.
It's been like a form of therapy for me, this, actually. I always gain more from chatting to diabetics than even sometimes going to therapists. And I've had some great people in therapy. I don't want to get that wrong, but people that understand what you're going through. I think that applies to any aspect of life. There'll be elements where I'm not right to talk about other people that might have faced discrimination in other phases or other autoimmune conditions that I don't understand. I would then not be the right person to sit to. So the big thing I've taken is, you know, speak to people that get your situation, because there's I've gained so much positivity from this. Like your story there, man, that is so you're an inspiration to the whole community by just being brave enough to tell your story and doing a half marathon since that. Like, you should, mate, you should, your mum would be so proud of you. Like, honestly, man, that is so powerful. But I just think it sounds like such a cliche, but just talk to people. There's always someone that wants to listen.
I agree. Just want to thank you guys for such an amazing conversation. And type 1 and diabetes doesn't hold us back. But what I've really liked about it has just been 4 men having a conversation about the chronic condition that we're living with. Yeah. And actually men demonstrating and showing that we can talk about health. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Brilliant.
Appreciate that.
Cheers.